How's everyone? Well, I'm going to do the opening prayer this morning, but before I do, I want to just go through a little exercise. It's a heart math exercise that just brings us all into resonance together. So I invite all of you to close your eyes and just focus on that area in your chest where your heart is. And as you picture that area where your heart is, I'd like you to start breathing in through the heart and out through your heart. And once again, breathe in through your heart and out through your heart. In, God is. Out, I am. And I go within. And I journey back nearly 14 billion years ago to a spaceless space before time or form, before this universe was born. I am at source. And in this place, I know there is no beginning and no end. There is just complete divine perfection. And I feel the vibration of that magnificence called God. Breathing in, God is. Breathing out, I am. And because I know I am and always have been one with this magnificence, I know that at the very instant that the creative nature brought forth the entire universe in a burst of resounding yes that we call the Big Bang, I know I was there. And I know every particle of my body is made of star stuff. And at the very core of who I am, at my own source, I sparkle. And in this place of perfection, I know that there is perfect health, perfect abundance. I see with perfect clarity. I hear with an open heart. I know at this source, I get it. I am the creator, the creative, and the created. And today I make a choice. I choose to allow that sparkle to grow in intensity with a light that bursts forth through me with my own resounding yes. And I proclaim that I am who and what I've been waiting for. So with great gratitude and joy and in celebration, I tilt my face up toward the sun and hold my hands out, and I know that something great has happened. I allow these words to merge with the mind that I call God. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning. So it being April 15th, which is the traditional day of taxes, I know you have till Tuesday, so relax to get them in this year, but normally this is the day, so I thought render unto Caesar would be a good thing to talk about today. And that comes from the Bible, where it says, render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's, and this is Matthew 22:21. And the context there were some people were listening to Jesus talk, and they asked him the question, the taxes were due, and they said, what should we do about these taxes? And And what he said to them was this quote, and they were very surprised because they were thinking that his response would be, pay only attention to what is spiritual and let the rest, you don't have to worry about the rest. But that's not what he said. And by the way, that's a rendering of Jesus as he probably actually would have looked, being a Semitic person of that time. The Renaissance painters tended to make him in their own image, which we all tend to do, but this is actually done on a scholarly process to kind of get a sense of if a person who lived in those times in that place that was Jewish, what would he probably look like? And kind of like that, so he may not look familiar to you, but same guy. Okay. Now, the Romans represented the outer world, the world of effects. So what he was talking about here was, as usual, a deeper lesson than just pay your taxes. What he was talking about was a representation that there is an inner life and an outer life. And we want to be present in both. We want to exist within the outer world, but we also have to remember that there is an inner world, an inner life that is upholding and supporting that outer life. The ancient wisdom saying is, as within, so without, as above, so below. And when we focus, what we tend to do is we tend to focus on the outer world. We tend to kind of live in the outer world, and we tend to confront the outer world, and the outer world occurs, and things happen, and then we try to respond to them. And this is really the message we get both from our sensory experience of the world, that things happen and then we react or respond. And culturally, we tend to get this, that, you have to be ready to confront the world and deal with what the world brings to you. So there's that idea that the power we're dealing with is outside of us. That we have to deal with this outer power, and then also we're told there's another power. There's a power for good, a power for evil, and they're both outside of you. Now, a metaphysical perspective would be very different, and metaphysics is what gave rise to that statement, as within, so without. As within, so without. Yet we tend to often live it the other way. We tend to live it as without, so within. And the problem with doing that is that it's a false understanding of reality. We don't live our lives from the outside in. We live them from the inside out. We encounter the outer world based on who we have become within ourselves. And that's not what our senses tell us. We also tend to have this illusion that we're creative in the moment in our conscious mind, which we're really not. The most recent research in psychology says, the idea, they even say, they put it this way, the idea of free will is an illusion. And I don't think that's entirely so, but the idea that I'm making an original decision right in this moment, that seems to be an illusion. Because they can show by brain imagery and other things that when you're having ever had an original idea? And it can just be, hey, I think I'll go to the movies, kind of out of nowhere. Okay? That actually, as much as an eight-tenths of a second before you realize you're having that idea, you have it on the subconscious level. Now, 8/10 of a second is an eternity in brain time, because the signals in your brain go just about at the speed of light, which is really fast. So in 8/10 of a second, you can do a whole lot in your brain. So what that says is that the decision to go to the movies was not so much an original spontaneous decision, so much as it was a result of the inner patterning, the inner way that we have conditioned our mind. That probably if you could get inside and kind of see all of the different impulses in your brain, you probably could have predicted that you would have had the original idea to go to the movies. That it's not just something that we just came up with. Now, this doesn't mean that our conscious mind doesn't direct our subconscious mind. What it does mean is that the subconscious mind is also directing the conscious mind, and the important thing is how you have programmed your subconscious mind. And you can only do that consciously. So how does this tie into this idea? Well, the Romans represented the outer world. And what Jesus was saying in this lesson is recognize that you deal with the outer world based on how you have prepared yourself within. That when you encounter something unexpected in the outer world, what you have to encounter that with is the preparation you have made within yourself, the self-programming through your self-talk, the beliefs that you have built up, and you will react to that outer situation according to those beliefs. We are never a blank slate walking into a situation, even though sometimes it seems like we are. We always carry with us patterns. Mostly stuff we've made up, by the way. And then we encounter the outer world. We use that patterning to determine the meaning of it, and we say, oh, that's what it means, and then we act, or we don't act. Now, we also know with psychological research that once you believe something is true, it's really, really hard to get you to believe that it's not true. And once you believe something is not true, it's really, really hard to get you to believe that it's true. Evidence doesn't do it. In fact, it's shown that in certain kinds of beliefs, when you are given evidence that is contrary to that belief, it strengthens your belief in the belief. Don't confuse me with the facts. So we're kind of funny people, But see, it's interesting. Once you understand that this dynamic's going on, a lot of the world begins to make sense. Like, why are people so crazy? The ones that don't believe what you believe. Why can't everybody just be rational? How can people think that way? How can they believe that way? You ever had that thought, right? Probably a couple times today already. You might be having it right now about me. Who is this guy? Jeez. Right? You can see it in our politics. You can see it in our culture throughout, the whole world. And what happens is when you see people behaving differently or responding to the outer world differently than you would because they see it differently, because their programming is different, we naturally assume there's something wrong with them. And don't worry, they're assuming the same thing about you. So we go to war. That's what war is about. War is about, you're not seeing the world the way I am. So I'll fix you. Right? You must be destroyed so that I can live in peace. And we do that all the time. We do it within our own family. Anyone ever had an argument with a relative? Anyone? No one? Okay. And it's usually about encountering something that you would say we might even say it's an objective reality, and seeing it from different programming. But to see it's not an objective reality because my programming also influences how I see it. So I don't see the world as it is. I see the world as I am. And you see the world as you are. It's amazing we can talk at all. It really is, when you think about it. Ernest Holmes talks about this idea of mysticism. Now, mysticism is simply the cultivation of the inner life. Okay? A mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth and without mental process arrives at spiritual realization. What does that mean? One who intuitively perceives truth and without mental process arrives at spiritual realization. What he's talking about here is what we would call intuition. Without mental process. That means without analyzing anything. Anyone here an analyzer? Yeah. Before you'll accept something, it has to be applied to rigorous scientific exploration, right? Examination. Let me see here. Because that's what we do with the teaching, right? You look at the textbook or Dr. Holmes' writings and you analyze it to see if it can be true. And the only problem is when we analyze it, we're analyzing with what? We're analyzing with our old programming. or our current programming, which is old by definition, because your programming today you created yesterday. Right now you're making new programming, which may be the same as your old program, because most of our thoughts just tend to reinforce what we already believe. You have to be open to seeing things differently before you can even possibly see them differently. Now, sometimes that opening is because we're willing. There are people that are willing to hear new things and see new things and experience new things. But there are a lot of people that aren't. And there are some people that are willing in some areas and not in others. So if you're unwilling to see things a new way, you can still see them a new way, but there will usually be some sort of a 2x4 in the side of a head kind of experience involved, a catharsis. You know, you refuse to see what's happening until you're hit in the face with it. I have a good friend that was very much anti-gay until he found out he had a gay son. And after that catharsis, which was not pleasant, and the disowning and all the other stuff that happened, he came to see it a different way finally. You know, he wasn't open to it naturally, but he was hit in the face with it, and he was forced to confront his beliefs. Now that's one way we change, is we're forced to confront our beliefs by something that happens that maybe is very close to us or very emotionally powerful or something like that. And that doesn't guarantee you'll change. It just means you may think about changing. The other way we change is to be open to change, and some people are crazy enough to actively seek change. And we do that because we're dissatisfied with something. All change arises out of some kind of dissatisfaction. And yet, sometimes we get into a teaching like this where we talk about, well, we're supposed to be affirming everything, but am I affirming what I'm dissatisfied with? And if I am dissatisfied, does that mean I'm not affirming well? You ever put yourself in that conundrum? Well, I should be happy with everything you see these little things on Facebook. Be grateful for what you have. If I really do a good job of that, I'll never change. Be grateful for what you have, but be open for transformation. How do you do that? Well, you can't without some dissatisfaction. See, I can be grateful for it and still be dissatisfied with it. But that's a higher order of mental operation, if you think about it. You know, you learn to be grateful for the painful things in your life because they opened you to something that you might not have been open to otherwise. Now, you're usually not grateful when you're having it, right? I think many women in the midst of childbirth have a different feeling about that baby than they will a couple of days later, or they did before. You know, because the pain is painful. But if we can cultivate the recognition that that's a necessary step in getting from point A to point B, then we can still have gratitude and still have the necessary degree of dissatisfaction. If you don't have a significant amount of dissatisfaction in your life, the odds are your life looks pretty much the same as it did 5 years ago, which may be fine. But at minimum, you would say there hasn't been any growth. You know, now if you had say an apple tree in your yard and it didn't grow for 5 years, would you think that was a good apple tree? Would you say there might be something wrong with it? Because the natural order of things seems to be that we grow, that we evolve. If your child stopped growing for 5 years, say at the age of 5, you would think, that's not normal. You see? So we don't really grow from comfort. We grow from dissatisfaction. We want to change something that, there's something in my life that I'm not satisfied with. And it could be that I want more of the same thing. It could be that I want something different. It could be that I want something new. That I don't like something that's there. And you know, by the way, this is how advertisement works. It gets you to be dissatisfied that you don't have that product or service by showing all these happy people that have it, or sexy people, or wealthy people, or people better than you. Or people that you want to be like, right? So you say, I'm dissatisfied. So you go to the store and you buy things. Do you buy things when you're satisfied? You tend to go to the store. They call it retail therapy, right? I'm dissatisfied with, the trouble is, I'm dissatisfied with my marriage. I think I'll go to Macy's. That doesn't usually work. But the mystical aspect that's so important in this is the development, the recognition that my inner development is what gives me my experience in the world around me. It's not the other way around. That the inner building of belief comes first, and then I have the experience, and that determines the quality of the experience. And that I can have a level of participation in this process that is both conscious and powerful. That I don't have to let the world happen to me. Dr. Michael Beckwith talks about 4 different levels of consciousness, and the lowest level is defined by things happen to me. And then you move up to things happen through me. And then the highest level is things happen as me. And what this growth through these levels is an increasing ability to understand that I'm creating my experience of life from the inside out, not the other way around. That if I'm waiting for the world to happen and to define myself by what happens in the world, I'm doing it backward. And there's one guarantee when you do it backward, you won't be an original. You'll tend to find someone or something to copy. You know. Now, it can be difficult to be an original. You know, because when you're an original, everyone else will look at you and not see like them. And we like to see like us. You know, like when you come here on Sunday, you like to look around and see that people are generally conforming, and how do we dress here? Right? I mean, if I showed up today in a tuxedo, I might get some compliments, but there would be an initial reaction of, okay, is there something I'm supposed to know that I don't know? Right? It's different. That's not Tommy Bahama. What's going on? So even though you know me, if I showed up in a radically different appearance, there would be that, I didn't get the memo. And you know, when you're new, if you're new here, you come in and you're kind of looking around to see, what do I fit in here? Do I fit in here not just in terms of the message being given? Do I fit in with the people, with the way they dress, with the cars they drive, and all that? And you might say, well, that's very superficial, but we are. That's one of the ways we sort of start at the outside and work our way in. You know, when your first Sunday here, you probably didn't walk up to someone you'd never met and say, tell me about the dreams at the depths of your soul. You probably said, where's the coffee? So we tend to start it. But see, we have to feel like we fit in. And if we're not careful, we'll let that sense of, let me see what everyone else is doing, guide our whole life. So there needs to be a balance between the development of the inner mystic and the ability to exist in the world around us. He says the mystic does not read human thought, but rather he senses the atmosphere of God. What's the atmosphere of God? Well, it's energy. You are energy, sensing energy. And the way we use our minds to direct our experience of that energy determines how we live in the world, how we are in the world. You know, Mary, in her opening treatment, said, breathe through your heart. Now, you might think, I breathe through my lungs. That's an analytical approach, right? But she mentioned something that might have been new or uncomfortable to you, and it took a period of adjustment to think, okay, what does that mean? It was interesting because last night on the ride home, we were at an event, and Dorian and I were listening to a doctor talk, and she was talking about a breathing exercise where you breathe in through the top of your head and out through your heart. And I'm thinking, the hell is she talking about? That was my initial reaction. What? But then I thought about it, and I saw I could kind of do it. I could kind of do it if I wanted to. And then today felt much more comfortable for me. But there is that kind of, what is the atmosphere of God? The atmosphere of God is energy. So, and I'm creative by means of my thought in directing my experience of energy and my relationship with the energetic patterns around me, and that would be you. You're an energetic pattern around me. And if I understand that relationship, then I can use my mind to generate a different experience of my life. But if I think that the world around me is where the power is, and all I can do is try to react to the world the best I can, that so limits me down to how I'll use my creative power. It says the teaching of the mystics has been that there should be conscious courting of the divine presence. In other words, you don't just become a mystic by, walking around waiting for it to happen or getting struck by lightning or some equivalent. You consciously court that inner quality. Why would you do that? Well, you would do it when you recognize that my whole external experience of the world around me is determined by my internal experience. And I didn't say part of it. I said all of it. All of it. The consciousness I bring into the room determines my experience in the room. And the consciousness I develop in the room, I will carry into the next room. And that can be changing over time, but the point is it's always an inside-out job. So I project out of myself onto the world mirrors it back, I see that and interpret it, and I move on. And we're always doing that all the time. Joseph Campbell says, the function of the Orthodox community is to torture the mystic to death. His goal. His goal. And before I talk about that, I'll do the, he says, what, people say, why that? He says, what do you do if you're a mystic? You walking around with a sign, like a big flashing sign says, I'm a mystic? He says, no, you wear the outer garment of the law. Behave as everyone else and wear the inner garment of the mystic way. Jesus also said that when you pray, you should go into your own room and close the door. When you go out, brush your hair. Don't let them know. Otherwise, you'll be a kook, something phony. See, what he's talking about here is the mystical awareness is simply an awareness of the way everything works. It doesn't make you different than anyone else in any way except the way you understand reality. We're all using the same reality. We're all encountering the world from our consciousness. The question is it a conscious awareness of how things actually work, or is it a conscious misunderstanding of how things actually work? And I can tell, life leaves clues. You can tell you have a conscious misunderstanding of the way things work if you're suffering. That doesn't mean if anything's going wrong. It means if you're suffering, which to me is prolonged discomfort or prolonged dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction should be relatively short-lived. I'm dissatisfied, I change my consciousness, I'm satisfied. Because I've moved into something new, something different, I've embraced more or less or gotten rid of or added to or whatever it was that I was seeking. But if I'm suffering and I'm saying, oh, woe is me, life is awful, Dr. Tom Costa talked about having the martyr kit he sold in the bookstore. It was a piece of Velcro you put here and one here, and you walk around. Oh, woe is me, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Oh, I know your life is working well, but let me tell you about mine. Have you got a few hours? And we go through our sad story and we replay it over and over. You have your greatest hits CD. Well, now it's on a little chip. But every time something comes up that reminds you of difficulty in life, you play the whole sad story over and over. It would be sort of like every time you saw a boat, you'd play the whole movie Titanic in 3D. And you sit through the whole thing, and then you'd say, okay, what do I want to do tonight? I don't know, I think I'm depressed. So if you're having these experiences on a fairly regular basis of being dissatisfied over a long term, it simply means that you're not using your creative ability to the level that is possible to use it. Now, Eric Butterworth, who was one of the great teachers in Unity, had a center in New York for years. He would call that a sin. He said the only sin is the frustration of potential. The frustration of potential. How do we frustrate potential? We believe something that isn't true. You think there's something wrong with you when there's nothing wrong with you. You listen to the world around you when it says there's something wrong with you. Whether it's Right Guard Company telling you your body odor is suspect, or your mother's voice in your head giving you whatever negative message that she bequeathed to you. It's not about, when we talk about sin here, we're talking about a mistake. Nothing morally wrong or anything. It's a mistake, which means you can correct it. The problem is when we do something that we have identified as wrong, we get into that whole thing of, oh, I did something wrong, I have to be punished. Which is a legacy of misinterpretation of the Bible. You ever feel that way? That you feel, if you feel you've done something wrong, you feel bad if then things go right? And you try to get rid of whatever, oh, I don't know, I don't deserve this good. Or you did something 30 years ago that you decided is unforgivable, and you won't let too much good come into your life because you've put yourself in a cell and you're in solitary confinement. All the creative energy it takes to do that could be rechanneled very easily into turning your life around. Same amount of energy. Which means stop doing what hurts and start doing what supports you. Now that sounds simple, and it is. It may not be easy. Why? Because I may still have some consciousness back here that says, well, I should feel guilty. Feeling guilty is a waste of time. It's a frustration of potential. So feeling guilty is a sin. Now you can feel doubly guilty. I want you to feel guilty about feeling guilty. No, don't do that. Because here's the truth. I think you'll find this is so. If I feel guilty about something I did that I think I shouldn't do, the more guilty I feel about it, the more likely I am to do it again. Why? Because I have a deep belief that I need to be punished, and I haven't been redeemed, and therefore I have to continue on this path so I can justify my feelings that I'm inadequate. I don't know why these are all out of order, but we'll just put them all up. Money, status, and the accumulation of livelihood. This has to do with how we interact with the world. It's tax time. Pay your taxes. Or don't. But if you think that this is a real good time to be reminded that the world is in control of you, or you feel like inadequate to the world because you got to sit down and fill out a form and maybe write a check. Money is a facilitating energy, not a goal, but a means to a goal. Where is your money going? What are you feeding with it? This is a good time of the year to think about that. What am I feeding with my money? What are you supporting? And Campbell says, you know on the inside whether you are on the beam or not. If you pursue money as an end, you're off the beam. You know, because being wealthy in and of itself doesn't make you happy. I don't know if you've noticed. Some people need to become wealthy so they can see that. Because you think if I only had X amount of dollars, all my problems would go away. Well, it's true. All of your existing problems may go away, but you get a whole new set. Because if I have a consciousness of having problems, I'm going to have problems no matter how much money I have, no matter how many friends I have, no matter how many wives I have. If my consciousness is that this percentage of my life has to be in turmoil, it will be in turmoil. If my consciousness is that all is well, all will be well no matter how much or how little money I have. So it's really about the consciousness. Am I changing the consciousness? We go after status. Joseph says if you're getting a degree to compensate for an inferiority complex, give up the complex because it's an artificial thing. When I think, here's what I need something to show the world that I am somebody. Maybe it's the best parking place, you know. I used to be a member of a center where they used to auction off parking places at the annual auction. And you buy a parking place for the year. And you get a sign with your name on it that was your parking place. That's a fun way to raise money. People would pay $3,000 for a parking place. And when you pull in, you'd have to say, oh, there's our parking place. It's got my name on it. You know, or you get the big check. You know, you ever done that where you're a plant person? Can I get a really big check? Because I want everyone to see it. Right? Status rarely comes from following your own path. You know, before everybody liked Steve Jobs, everybody hated Steve Jobs. For a longer time probably than he was liked. Because he didn't follow what everybody thought you should do. When you follow your own path, you make people uncomfortable by definition. Because you become unpredictable. So you can get the corner office by being predictable, but it's unlikely that you can be your true self to do that. You can also get the corner office by being unpredictable, but you're going to have to go through all the time of people saying, you make me uncomfortable. Because you must modify your life to suit a person, a group, or a philosophy. Now, there's an element of that everywhere. But, you know, people become what we call people pleasers. Which means I'll do anything I need to do to keep you happy or to have you like me. Hard to be original when you do that. And you're not really and see, it's saying, I need to see what the outer world wants and change myself to match it. And that's not the way it works. It's as within, so without. Campbell says, I have a theory that if you're on your own path, things are going to come to you. Since it's your own path and no one has ever been on it before, there's no precedent, so everything that happens is a surprise. And it's timely. It takes a lot of courage to go on your own path, though. I'll say that. It takes a lot of courage, you know. But if you don't, there's no way you can truly be fulfilled. It really is fairly simple. I came here, this is my belief, I came here with a certain urge to express and a unique set of gifts to give to the world. And the only way I can do that is to go within and find those and let them come out in the best way that I can. If I look to the world to tell me who to be, the odds are they're not going to ask for the gifts I brought because they don't know what they are. And if I'm going to give my gifts, which the world must need, creation must need your gift, or you'd be redundant. And maybe, we have so many problems because we don't have enough people giving their gift. We have too many people trying to conform. Maybe that's part of the problem. He says, I love this quote. He says, I mean it. This is simply basic. Get those pressure ideas out of your system, and then you can find, like a ball on a roulette wheel, where you're going to land. Take what comes and be where you like. What counts is being where you feel you're in your place. I'm sending this quote to my daughter who's about to go off to college. What a great lesson. And they're not going to teach her that at college. They're going to teach her, here's where the highest paying jobs will be, and here's how you can set yourself up to make the most money, or whatever it is, because that's what they assume everybody wants, because that's what everybody says they want. What people think is their problem. What will they think of me must be put aside for bliss. Bliss, according to Joseph, is finding your own inner truth and living from it. So as we think about how we interact with the outer world, financially, in our relationships, whatever it is, we want to get back to the idea, the recognition that it's an as within, so without process. That my experience with the outer world is created within me. And that my job is not to conform to the outer world, other than to be a supporter of the general welfare, but to do that in my own unique way. It's a tough lesson, because for some reason, most of humanity isn't interested in that in terms of understanding how humans develop and how we interact with the world. But once you know, it seems to make sense because it works. So my job and your job is to create a magnificent life, unbound by the limitations that society would say what is possible and what's impossible, and to step into that reality as best you can, as fully as you can, as completely as you can, to live out loud. And to be willing that everybody not be happy with you all the time. Or maybe there are times when nobody will be happy with you. But that's okay. Because when you know you're in your genuine self, nothing else matters. You don't need anybody else to be okay with it. So as you pay your taxes this year, recognize that you're doing that because you have agreed to be a citizen of this country, or this state, or whatever it is you're paying taxes to. And recognize that the creative energy within you is the greatest thing that ever happened to this nation. And that the more you can express that, the better off we all will be. So thank you, and namaste.